aims to emphasize why climate resilient ECD is essential. So just a reminder, as you keep joining in, please introduce your chat box because first 5 to 10 minutes are just for the introduction and letting the participants in. So keep joining in and we will be looking at your responses in the chat box. So to set the floor, this webinar is, with this webinar, we aim to bring evidence and highlight the ECD system that placed young children and their caregivers at the center of climate policies and emergency response. Even the recent UNICEF study, the rising temperature in South Asia are putting 460 million children at risk, where 76% are exposed to extreme heat. Flooding is also a constant issue and a threat in Pakistan. The recent 2022 claustrophobic flooding in Pakistan submerged one-third of the country, affecting 33 million people, out of which half of them were the children. So with this heat waves, drought, and abnormal monsoon rains, climate change is also a constant risk. So climate change is not a distant threat anymore. It is here and we all are suffering it. But unfortunately, the silent victims are the vulnerable population, which includes young children and their caregivers, specifically mothers. So as we go forward, why we are focusing so much on Global South? Because the climate risk index, global climate risk index, 6 out of 10 countries are from Asia, which includes Pakistan, Bangladesh, Thailand, Nepal, Myanmar, and Philippines. So Global South is suffering the most. Contribute and the funding. As we begin, let me briefly introduce to our esteemed panelists. We have Mr. Ugan from Kiribati who brings insight from his country that is. Next, we will have Tang from Vital Strategies, Singapore. She will present a fact sheet on the effects of heat on climate change development in Asia Pacific region. Perspectives and voices from the parents in Pakistan. So as we move forward, participants are also joining in. We will pause for a minute and have a quick interaction with all of you for the insights you can share on climate change and ECD. So we will share a link of a Mentimeter. This will provide you with the questions. Please see the chat box. You will have a link to it. We want to ask few of the questions so we can get insight and your perspectives, which will give us insight to it. You can go to the chat box and see the link and open it. A question will appear and then you can answer that. Yeah. Okay. So I hope that you all can see the first question. And the first question is, write one word that comes to your mind when you think of climate change and young children. So you can write your responses. I will repeat the first question, which is, write one word that comes to your mind when you think of climate change and young children. So as you will write, the answers will appear on the screen. Okay, we can see vulnerability, health issues. Okay. So we have a 1 minute for the participants to keep writing their responses. मेरे phones आना शुरू हो इसको म्यूट कैसे करूं Okay, so the most emerging response is vulnerability, hunger, emotional trauma, We see crisis, we see wash facilities. So all of these responses are actually very accurate and helpful. Yes, this is true. So we will move to the next question. The next question will also appear on the screen. Okay, so few of the participants are also typing on the chat box. I will suggest maybe you can go to the link and respond the answers. But if it's not working, then still you can keep writing the answers on the chat box because we are also reviewing them. Yes, we can see poverty as well. Okay, so we move to the next question. So next question is, what does climate resilient ECD means to you? You can keep writing your answers on the same link which we have shared. Okay, we can see the answers of security. We see responsive policies. Yes, this is also a very, okay. We see systems, we see adaptation, strong systems, training, responsive policies, emergency measures, sensitive caregivers. Okay. Yes, so everything which is coming on the screen is actually very relevant to the question that what is climate resilient ECD and what are the gaps. So yes, this is really insightful to know that the participants are very well aware of how climate is affecting ECD and their caregivers. So with this, we will move to our next question. Okay, I can see the responses on this question that what is climate disaster? What do you think young children and their caregivers need the most during climate disasters and emergencies? And I see food awareness. I can see safety, basic needs. I also saw someone wrote toys, which is very relevant learning material for the kids. Awareness, emotional support, nutrition. Thank you. These are very insightful. I think these responses are giving us an insight to you putting effort towards what is more important for ECD and their caregivers. So next. Okay, so now we will move to our fourth question, which is what is currently missing from climate change responses for young children? This is the last and the fourth question. You can answer it as well using the same link. It will appear on your screen and you can answer that. As you will answer, the answers will start appearing on the screen. And it will give you the insight that what everyone is saying and how you look towards this climate change and climate change issues for young children and their caregivers. Okay, see, we see policies, we see awareness, inclusivity, very relevant. Children are ignored in DRR, very right. Yes, I think we need to put children and their caregivers in the center of the DRR policies and emergency responses. Inclusivity, yes. So a lot of answers, actually all of the answers are very relevant, and this is actually setting a floor towards this webinar. So this is very insightful for us. I also see a productive approach. Okay, we see emotional support. So the answers are keep coming up on the screen, and I'm sure you all can resonate to whatever the participants are saying, because all the answers are very relevant. So yes, thank you for that. So now we can move forward with our next part of the webinar. So now we will move forward with the presentations. Our first presentation is by Mr. Ogan.
Hello.
Yes. Okay, so just a brief introduction to Mr. Ogan. Mr. Ogan is experienced environmentalist and development consultant with over 30 years of experience in Bhutan civil society and environmental sector. He holds a master's degree in applied communication change and conservation from University of Future Generations, USA. His experience spans on national resource management, community development, education project planning, management, environment, and social safeguard management of Care Bhutan, which is climate action. You can present. Over to you. Thank you.
Good morning and good afternoon and good evening. So first of all, thank you for having me as one of the speakers in this very important gathering. My name is Ugin Hendup, and I currently work for a community-based organization called Care Bhutan, as introduced. My presentation today is on the findings of a situational analysis on the integration of climate change in ECCD program in Bhutan. So in order to set the context, I am not sure how many of you knows about Bhutan. Bhutan is a small mountainous country in the Himalayas with about 700,000 people. Bhutan is known for its environmental leadership and commitments to the gross national happiness. Bhutan is also a carbon negative country. However, Bhutan is very, very vulnerable to the impacts of the climate change. Our glaciers are melting rapidly, causing threat of a glacial lake outburst flood. We are experiencing extreme weather patterns with very erratic rainfall, heat waves, disruption of monsoon patterns, cold winters with no snowfall, and so on. Our water sources are drying rapidly, impacting our agriculture, our hydropower. Bhutan's main economy is the hydropower generation, and then also impacting on the drinking and sanitation. Similarly, there are a lot of other impacts of climate change that are experienced in Bhutan. So, knowing the situation, the community-based organization, Care Bhutan, we had embarked on situation analysis to study what are the impacts of climate change on the early child care development program. So the study was supported by ARNIC, and it was done in collaboration with Ministry of Education. The ECCD program in Bhutan started in early 2008 with about 2 pilot centers and with about 25 children, young children. The program was initiated by a single officer called Mr. Karmagile, who is the specialist in this field now. And but now we have about 750 ECCD centers with about 1,000 plus ECCD facilitators and over 25,000 children aged between 3 and 5. So that is the context. Now, in terms of the situation analysis, our primary objective was to understand and get the perspective of people at different level on the integration of climate change in the ECCD program. So we have 3 research questions. How can climate change education be effectively integrated into ECCD curricula? Then the other one is, what are the systematic and pedagogical and social cultural barriers hindering the integration? And what are the evidence-based, culturally relevant and age-appropriate pedagogical strategies that we would introduce? Now, in order to keep this to the country context, Bhutan is rooted with Buddhist values and gross national happiness. Then, in terms of vulnerability, despite of having high forest cover, about 70% of the country is covered in a forest. We still have high the ECCD program has there are number of crucial windows to instill climate literacy, and then environmental stewardship. So that is the context. Next slide, please. In terms of the methodology that we had done extensive survey where we did survey for 327 ECCD facilitators. We had communicated with about 500 parents, and we have also reached out to about 15 district education officers. So we have also interviewed the policymakers and educators. We had also conducted focus group discussions with the parents and the local leaders, local government leaders. We had also traveled to about 10 ECCD centers and then observed the classes and interacted with the young children there. And besides, we also had referred to a number of references and publications on ECCD curriculum and training materials, and then ECCD related policies. And the scope of our the study was nationwide. Next slide, please. So upon the analysis, the findings, the key findings from the research was that the parental perspective, about 78% of the parents, they express that they discuss about climate change at their home level when they communicate with their children. They talk about weather, they talk about heat, they talk about the issues related to climate change. About 89% of the parents, they support having the climate change education in the ECCD program. Similarly, the findings on the educators and the ECCD facilitators, 90% of the ECCD facilitators, they mentioned that although there is no curriculum, but they do talk about climate change, like in a simple waste management, is one good example. They teach about waste management, which if it is not properly done, it can lead to emission of methane and all these things. So they do discuss climate change with the children. They talk about when it is extreme hot, they should not, children should not be staying too much in the I mean outside in the sun. So they do all these adaptive arrangements. About 70% of the ECCD facilitators, they have interest, but they pointed out that they lack capacity. They mentioned that their capacity to understand the concept of climate change. So which means they need capacity building. They need to be taught about what climate change and what are the impacts of climate change. And of course, there are also some ECCD facilitators who think that climate change is too big subject to discuss this with the ECCD, which is children age 3 to 5. So these are
Sir,
the
2 minutes left for you.
then in terms of policy, there's no formal curriculum as of now, and then there's also a lack of teaching materials and training that are given to the facilitators or in the program. And then of course agencies are fragmented, and then there was nobody to take any lead in this area. Next slide, please. So next slide. So there are a number of recommendations. Integrate climate change in ECCD, mandatory training for the educators. Then there was also a need for fund allocation for this program. And then there's also need for engaging parents in community workshops and awareness, because the parents are the one who mostly stays with their children. And then there's also need to develop an assessment tool to monitor children's progress in terms of climate literacy. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide. So in terms of the call to action, in terms of the policymaker, institutionalize climate change and ECCD policy and curriculum, allocate sustain funding for implementation of and training. Then for the educators and for the institutions, embrace hands-on, culturally rooted teaching practices. Then collaborate with the colleges and pre-services and in-services training institutions. And for the communities and CSOs, partnership and co-creating learning materials, locally based, using locally available materials, and then all these things should also embed the local knowledge, that is integration of indigenous knowledge. So in conclusion, I think having or initiating this is not just creating awareness, but I think this is we are trying to nurture or build the resilience of children. We are in fact investing in the young children to be steward of climate in the long run. So in that way we can build the resilience of these young children from all these impacts of climate change. So that's all. Thank you. Yeah, if there's any question, I will try to
Thank you,
answer.
sir. Thank you, sir, for the insightful presentation on the integration of climate change in early childhood care and development. We will have a separate question and answers in the end. We have a separate slot for 10 minutes. So we will
Okay.
cover those questions with all the presenters in the end. So dear participants, if you have any questions, please share them in the chat box and we will try to ask these questions in the last 10 minutes. Thank you. So now we will speak to the next speaker. We have Lynn Tang. She is the Director of Programs, Environmental Education, Environmental Climate and Urban Health at Vital Strategies, which is an international public health organization. She is a development professional with over 2 decades of experience in various local and international NGOs, including UN and Conservation International. She has proven competencies in a range of roles, including marketing and communications, program management, partnerships development, and fundraising. Her past and the present project portfolio includes air pollution, lead poisoning, non communicable diseases, data, and integrations for environment and climate health tracking. So, we will, Ms. Lynn, please go ahead with your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And I want to firstly thank RNA and ITA for inviting me to be a presenter. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm really delighted to be here today to present to you more about my presentation, which is on, let me just, the effects of heat on early childhood development. So before I dive into the specifics of heat, I just wanted to share why young children are extra vulnerable to climate change and environmental hazards. I believe a lot of us already know this, but this really puts it in print and it makes it easy for us to deliver this argument. Firstly, their internal health systems are still developing. As we know, 80% of brain development occurs between 0 to 3. Their immune systems are weak and therefore they are more susceptible to toxins, bacteria, and disease. They absorb so much more from the environment because they drink, breathe, and eat more per body weight compared to adults. So when the air is polluted, when the food's contaminated, they also take in relatively more. And of course, they are physically weak. Young children simply do not have the mental, emotional, and physical capacity to deal with climate shocks and stresses. So as an example, I wanted to bring up lead poisoning. So lead poisoning is very prevalent in South Asia, actually, and around the world. And it is proven that infants and young children absorb about 4 to 5 times more of the lead that enters their bodies than adults do. So climate change in this region, as most of you have experienced, we are actually one of the most affected regions in the world. According to the Global Climate Risk Index, 6 of the top 10 countries most affected by climate change from 2000 to 2019 are located in Asia, Myanmar, Philippines, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Thailand, and Nepal. And Asia Pacific countries have experienced on average 6 natural disasters per year over the past 3 decades. This is about twice as many as developing countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, and nearly 3 times as many as those in sub-Saharan Africa. As we know, climate change also leads to a lot of internal displacement and conflict, and 70% of climate migrations were actually in the Asia Pacific region. So clearly, climate change is a big problem in our region and for young children. So what Vital Strategies has done with UNEC as a first step is that we've thought about what the top 4 leading climate hazards are in this region, and we've developed 4 specific fact sheets to explain more about these hazards, why they're harmful, and most importantly, what we can do about it at every level, whether at individual level, institutional level, subnational or national level. And I really strongly encourage all of you to download these fact sheets and see how you can adapt them to your local context. You can just copy and paste and print and give it out, translate it, create a workshop of it, create videos of it. Really use the content that we have put together for you. And if you have any feedback on this content, these are living documents, and we are open to adapting and improving them as they go along. Please let us know as well. So how do you access these fact sheets? You can go to the climate microsite on RNEC, www.climate.rnec.net. Go into the menu item of RNEC initiatives and then seek out the hazard fact sheets. You can also just directly scan this QR code here. So we decided that the top 4 hazards were air pollution, flooding, lead poisoning, and heat. And for the purpose of today, I'm actually going to focus on heat. And the reason for that is that the heat fact sheet has actually just been launched to tie in with the hot season in this part of the world. I don't know about all of you, but in Singapore, it's getting hotter increasingly every day, and we can almost be sure that we will experience a couple of heat waves this year as well. So heat waves have been increasing and growing in intensity every year since the 1950s. As I was working on this fact sheet, 2023 was the hottest year on record, but it soon was supplanted by last year, 2024. So cross fingers that 2025 will not be the next hottest year on record. And 3 out of 4 children in South Asia are exposed to extreme heat. So what are some of the findings around heat in young children? We found that young children, especially infants, are less able to regulate their body temperatures. They absorb more heat from the environment and have less capacity to release heat via sweating, as they have underdeveloped sweat glands. And extreme heat also can activate their stress response system, which can disrupt the development of a healthy brain. Heat exposure has also been linked to a variety of negative health outcomes, such as jaundice, neurological dysfunction, stunting, and wasting. There are also indirect impacts of heat. Climate change is famously known to have a lot of indirect impacts. And here are some of...
few minutes. You have 2
Thank
minutes.
you. Learning loss. So studies have shown that heat affects the brain's ability to focus and react. And heat waves also lead to a lot of school closures, depriving children of learning and social interaction. Along with the lack of ability to focus and react, it tends to make people more aggressive and increase irritability. And studies have shown that violent crimes like murder, aggravated assault, rape, etc. are more likely to happen when temperatures climb. So we're not suggesting that young children are committing these crimes, but if they experience or witness these acts of violence, we can imagine that it can lead to long-lasting PTSD. And of course, nutrition, food security is affected during a heat wave. Air pollution, because excess heat leads to an increased risk of wildfires, which leads to a lot of air pollution. and vector-borne disease, malaria and dengue. Dengue is actually the fastest growing vector-borne disease today. And so what can we do about this issue? So here are the list of recommendations, and we've spaced it out according to the level that you're able to contribute, whether you're a parent, a caregiver, or just an individual. This is what you can do. Get updated information so you know how hot it's going to be during the day, during the week, during the month, and try to avoid going out in the middle of the day when it's the hottest. But if you must be outside, have cooling gear with you like hats, umbrellas, fans, and mist sprays. Keep your home cool by closing closing the curtains. Carry a water bottle with you. For lactating mothers, they should remember to continue breastfeeding and not supplement with water. And be aware of the signs and symptoms of heat-related illnesses, especially for your young children, because they lack the ability to vocalize if they need support. If you run an institution, you're in a childcare center, a school, this is what you can do. You can provide shade, you can provide cooling appliances, you can ensure that your center staff and caregivers are trained in heat safety, shift outdoor playtime, allow for looser school uniforms. There's actually a variety of ideas that you can come up with if you sit down and innovate together with your staff. And I also want to highlight like all these call to actions are available in the fact sheet and more. So please take a look at the fact sheet if you like more details. And finally, for cities, states, and even at a national level, they can prepare themselves for heat by developing a heat action plan with an early warning and notification system, linking it to preparedness and response with a focus on ECD settings. They can run public education campaigns to raise awareness, provide education and resources on how to handle themselves and their children during a heat wave, increase access to air conditioning, water points, short-term tents and cooling centers in public places during a heat wave, ensure that new urban development does not contribute to heat. This is quite important because there's a urban heat island effect, which, as you know, when many buildings are together and we remove all the vegetation, there's a lack of wind flow, a lack of shade, and it really causes temperatures to rise quite substantially compared to, say, the rural or more green areas. So we encourage that planners can incorporate green and blue solutions to cool down their urban environments. So green solutions are things like trees, vegetation, gardens, green roofs, and blue solutions are things like lakes, rivers, and even fountains. And of course, using light-colored reflective roofs can really lower ambient temperatures, as dark-colored roofs can absorb more than 80% of sunlight. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope it was helpful for you and you managed to get something. Again, I encourage you to look at the fact sheets for more details, and I remain here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn, for laying out such compelling data from Global South and with the interaction of heat exposure on ECD and early development. Specifically, the call for action is indeed very helpful. And dear participants, if you have any questions, please share in the chat box and we will cover that in the last 10 minutes of the webinar when we will have a separate question answer sessions with the presenters. So now we will move to our third and last presenter. So with a brief overview, Dr. Shanila Bhamani is lead ECD prep and assistant professor in Department of Gynae and Ob at Aga Khan University. She also serves as program director for outreach education. She holds a PhD degree with a specialization in early childhood development and is globally certified as a master trainer and mentor in ECD programming. Over the past decades, Dr. Shanila has pioneered the integration of evidence-based parenting education into healthcare settings across Pakistan, benefiting more than 15K caregivers to date. Her scholarly work includes curriculum design, facility development, and system strengthening, particularly emphasizing interventions that support the workforce and caregivers. She has authored several books for young children, published over 50 peer-reviewed papers, and in her recent climate change and ECD-related work, she has conducted multiple capacity development sessions for parents and is closely engaged in advocating for the impact of climate change on young children and their development. Dr. Shanila, over to you, and you can share your PPT. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mariam, and thank you, IT and ARNEC, for discussing on this vital agenda of interest and the global urgency. I'll switch off my video for the limited internet connectivity purposes and share my slide deck with you. Thank you. Thank you, Mariam. Can you see my PPT? Can you see my
Yes,
slide
we
deck?
can see. Yes, we can see that. Just yeah, on the full screen, we can see that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So as it's visible from the title as well, that I'll be presenting today the voices of caregivers on the climate beliefs and intentions from Pakistan. And this quote was the most catchy quote when I was doing this research. I'm scared and unaware, but what can I do? Talking about Pakistan, Pakistan is a country of 242 plus million people. And as per the HDI index, which a corrected bias in basis, Pakistan ranks the highest among nations most affected in the climate, particularly post 2022, which underscores the urgent need to integrate climate resilience into early childhood development because altered temperature, precipitation, humidity, all of these create unfavorable conditions for young children and very favorable conditions for the disease. It has a huge impact on children overall well-being, their anxiety, their depression, their mental health issue. Particularly in 2020, when the hyper monsoon events hit Pakistan, it sharply increased a huge amount in dengue, malaria, typhoid, and other things. In one of the reports by UNICEF, a significant research gap also was explored regarding the intersection of climate change and early childhood development. While substantial research already exists on climate change and that impacts Pakistan, particularly on food security, their physical well being, their medical needs, there's a lack of focus on how climate change directly affects ECD programs, children's learning, their overall development, according to a UNICEF report. And there's also a gap that exists as to how it's impacting parenting and caregiving practices of young children. As we can see that climate overall impacts well-being of young children, causing severe damage to already fragmented infrastructure in Pakistan. Parents play a pivotal role in mitigating the climate risk. However, their own climate beliefs and intentions critically shape how children form their environmental knowledge and how they respond to environmental crises as well. There's a lot of data available in Pakistan when it comes to climate and its damage, but there's a limited data available to see the impact of climate change on nurturing care components, and particularly in the early childhood development. And I'm sure all of us are aware of the nurturing care components, that is health, adequate nutrition, safety and security, learning and simulation, and responsive caregiving. There's also an evidence gap in understanding the perspective of carers, particularly parents, teachers, caregivers, care providers, as to how they see climate urgency, what are the things that they want to do to mitigate climate risk. There are bulk of materials to educate parents, to educate communities, but there are limited studies that show the impact and effectiveness and access of these knowledge to the communities, particularly to parents of young children. And so, considering the gaps in the research, we conducted a kind of a multi-phase study where we conducted a scoping review to explore the impact of climate risk on the nurturing care components. We also explored the teachers and school leaders' perspective of the impact of climate on early years learning settings. And we also did mapping of resources on climate change management and its perceived knowledge and access and effectiveness. But today I'll be presenting one section of the study, which is belief and intentions, and what are the perceptions of caregivers pertinent to climate. And so the particular focus of the research that I'm presenting today is what are the climate change beliefs and intention amongst the parents of young children? Because I found parents and caregivers to be most vulnerable in this situation where they have resources, but they are somewhat helpless to mitigate the climate risk. This is the conceptual framework that we have used, that how parents, their intention and belief pertinent to climate change has an impact on children and how they form climate risk and mitigation. For this particular study, we used a cross-sectional survey design where we assessed parents' perception of their climate attitude, and we used a survey by Christens. And we also try to understand that, what are the perspective of the parents as well, but that was done really briefly. We applied a universal sampling whereby we invited all the parents who were registered in our program across Pakistan to participate in this survey. These are some of the demographics of the participants who participated in our study. You can see that there was a fine balance of male and female. There were people who were highly educated as well. There were people who had socioeconomic gaps as well, as most of the parents were earning less than, 100K, particularly less than 50K, having a 3 to 4 average household members. This I found is one of the most interesting findings from our study, which categorically speak about that how belief and intentions of the parents, which are shown here, as you can see the data on the right-hand side, it says that how their beliefs, intentions has a lot of variability. Talking about beliefs, if you can see all 9 items, about the reality, causes, and impact of climate change score well below the midpoint, indicating that most parents do not endorse these statements. Even the strongest of the beliefs, like climate change has a negative effect on our lives, so it remains on the disagreed end of it. You see? Talking about the efficacy as well, items probing personal agency, like the actions that parents can take, also reflect low confidence in their ability to make difference. If we also talk about the intentions, all of these items regarding the intentions, it also shows defeatism. Like example, concerns have been exaggerated. Parents found that it's a waste of time. So, the kind of things that parents can do, they are actually trying to show their helplessness through this data. All of it also indicate a small subset of parents also hold more positive view that they can play some role, but primarily it's negative, if you can really see. There's a lot of disagreement suggesting minimal proactive interest. They also show that a lot of fatalistic attitudes, particularly if you see the standard deviation that talks about it, climate change will impact future generations. So, it shows that, the kind of urgency that we are trying to address here globally, parents have a very different view of it. Moving on to the key findings, we also saw that, since the quantitative data was showing such negative trends, what are some of the qualitative perspectives? So we called back the participants to understand what they feel about climate, what are their beliefs, and wanted to hear maybe in a couple of sentences to understand whether are we doing the right analysis or not. And interestingly, qualitative findings also co-associated with this thing. One of the parents mentioned, alone, I cannot make a difference. Another caregiver mentioned, what can one do? Climate friendly stuff is expensive. So you see, showing that although we are trying to move to climate friendly materials, but these are very expensive for parents. World will end soon. Many caregivers also were talking about that, there's something wrong with the world, it will end soon. So, trying to show that fatalism attitude towards it. I'm scared and unaware, but well, what can I do? I fear catastrophe, but we are punished for our deeds. So there are a lot of religious, a lot of cultural, underpinning to this data as well. There are so many resources, I get overwhelmed. So parents also talk about there are so many resources, we are bombarded with information and it gets overwhelmed. So I don't read anything about climate. How is climate related to parenting? Why are you even asking me? One of the parents told me. As a nation, we have become indifferent no matter what happens. This was the quote from one of the fathers. Government should do something. Most parents said that, oh, it's not our job, it's the job of the government, it's the job of the municipality, local governments. And parents in this survey tend to reject both the reality of climate change and their own capacity to address it, and instead lean towards fatalism, which is higher agreement that anything that we do is a waste of time. And this perception can be truly disturbing if we really see the global urgency of climate change. And so, from the data, we could see that although climate change is a global urgency, but local perceptions of caregivers of young children vary. They view it as a distant or even natural phenomenon, undermining the urgency which is there. We also saw a lot of low belief and high fatalism, like I mentioned. They were like, oh, we can't do anything about it. There is, we are punished for our deeds. The world is going to end soon. There's a lot of optimism bias parents also showed in this data. They believe that the adverse climate impact won't personally affect their families, showing a kind of an overconfidence. Okay, we will see what comes next. They also portrayed, the data also showed that there's also learned helplessness amongst many caregivers. Repeated exposure of these negative adverse climate events has fostered that belief pattern in their mind, and also the kind of a infrastructure Pakistan has right now. They
Dr.
think
Shanila,
that
you have 2 minutes left.
sure, they think their personal efforts will not have any change. Their personal efforts cannot do anything, and it leads to resignation of their engagement in mitigating climate risk. There's also a lot of difference between information deficit and their motivated reasoning. That's what I found, and it's also relevant in the other studies in the literature as well. That there's a lot of low belief which may stem not only to lack of information but also psychological filters, because parents feel that they reject, they downplay evidence, that conflict, and they try to bring reason to all their actions, that okay, alone what can I do. So these have been some of the key findings. Some of the recommendations we tried looking through our data were, we need to address the education gaps. There is a critical need to tailor parenting education modules that integrate climate-based resilience on parenting, because as much as parents in the data are rejecting this thing, they become the most vulnerable in all situations. Caregivers must also be positioned as central actors in national and local climate action plans, because we develop a lot of materials, we develop a lot of policies, but engaging parents and caregivers in those policy development is vital. There's also a lot of research gap. We lack mediation analysis to unpack how parental belief can translate into behavior and their child outcomes. We also lack longitudinal analysis to understand how climate attitude is actually impacting the climate risk. If we see, this picture, you could see that there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of trash around the roads. So we need to understand that how their climate attitude and behavior change over time is impacting the climate, and bring some evidence around it. There's also a need to understand and link the survey data to child development metrics, because there's a lot of data available on climate, and there's a lot of data available on the nutrition and the health side of the nurturing component. But we also need to pack the data to other three components of the nurturing care framework as well, which is learning and simulation, the impact of climate on learning and simulation, impact of climate on responsive caregiving, and impact of climate on child safeguarding as well. There are a lot of practice gap we also see around, which is like climate focused services and products remain so expensive. So even if you educate parents, they cannot afford those good climate friendly materials. So we need to understand the low cost scalable options available, so that it can be can be made easily accessible to parents, particularly in the lower middle income countries. You see, because plastic bag in all shops is free, but if you want to buy a tote bag, you have to buy a tote. Establishing dedicated climate committees at the community level, particularly using religious and cultural community task force groups, those social influence circles. We need to also engage a lot of social media influencers to bridge that gap, because community nowadays are very much dependent on reel. We are all reel generation. So we need a lot of small reels for parenting education.
Education is integrated in Bhutan, which has been very successful. So it's also a learning from us as well. So now we will turn to the participants for the questions. A lot of questions have already been answered in the webinar chat box as well. But if you have any questions, please share that. I have few of the questions which I have taken out from the chat box. So we will turn to Sarugan, Lane, and Dr. Shanira one by one so you can answer them. And if you still have any questions, you can share them in the chat box. So my first question is from Miss Land. There was a question which was asked in a chat box that does your analysis of hazard and recommendations around climate change take into the account of young children with disabilities?
Oh,
So
yes. I've actually answered that. It doesn't. We haven't really looked at young children with disabilities or any kind of marginalized young children, like whether they're impoverished or discriminated. But we do know for a fact that they are going to, have a double, maybe even triple burden from climate change because they need so much more attention, they need so much more resources and support.
Okay. Okay. So my next question was with the ECD hazard fact sheet which you have shared. What will be your takeaway on policy strengthening that can be a help to scale up across the region for the global south? Because these fact sheets are there were recommendations which can be taken place in the country or in the region, but a lot of resources and funding would be required. So what would be your one takeaway for policy strengthening for this?
Wow, one takeaway. There's so many, but after Dr. Shalina's presentation, I think we need to send a message of hope and a message that we can all do something. Climate change is upon us, but we shouldn't just sit here and, literally be sitting ducks while these hazards are happening. There's something that everyone can do, and we also need to build a more resilient mindset that, even with setbacks and all that, that we are going to bounce back every time. So I did feel like communications and sharing this spirit of hope is really important, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money, as we can all get on social media for free.
Okay, thank you. So next, sir, again, so I have one question for you as well. So as Bhutan has successfully integrated climate change education in ECD curriculum, and that is also well reciprocated by parents and communities. And when you saw the presentation from Pakistan, this is a dilemma that it has not been well acknowledged by the parents. So what would be your takeaway for the other countries in global south to make it possible, just like how it has been possible in Bhutan?
Okay. So I think as I did, I think communicating, effective communication with the parents. I think that is very important because yeah, in case of Pakistan, she mentioned Dr. Shalina. She mentioned about the extreme I mean the impacts of climate change and that are being affecting the children. So I think making parents understand the impacts, I think that is very crucial because yeah, even in our case, most of the parents uh,
Yeah.
who are residing in the
Now,
rural area. Hello, can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you, and I think you're very right. To involving parent and educating them on it is very important.
Yes,
I think it
yes,
takes
exactly.
a longer time to have a perspective change on the parents.
Yeah, so yeah, as you rightly mentioned, parenting education is very crucial.
Yes. So my last question is from Dr. Shanila. Dr. Shanila, if you can answer that, how do we access parents and remove systematic barriers to engage them from climate education, keeping in mind the both rural and urban setting of Pakistan? And what will be your call to action for this?
Thank you so much, Mariam. First, I guess it's really important to engage parents in all decision making. Whether we are developing a policy, whether we are developing a disaster risk management plan, whether we are developing a training module, or even curriculum for young children, it's very important to have their say in the team or in the development of those programs and documents. So, systematically we can include them. Now, there are many systemic barriers. Most of the time, parents from the rural areas, parents from the low resource settings, parents who are disabled are left. So you see, you pick up 10 handouts, random 10 handouts from Pakistan or any global setting, and you will see in those 10 handouts, you will hardly find two talking about disabled parent managing flood or a disaster. So make sure that systemic barrier of not including the excluded can be broken by all of us. So we ensure when we are calling parents, it should not be an urban parent like me who has good speaking language skills and
Yeah.
background. We call a person who is like resource constrained. We call a parent who is disabled. We call a parent who is a father. We call a parent who is old. So to have that representation in the decision making process, in the mitigation process. So one systemic barrier is a barrier of not including the excluded. The second systemic barrier is, I don't know whether it's systemic or we have been cursed by it, but putting investments. Now we are a poor country. How do we bring investments? So, there are good local traditional knowledge base, where parents would, make small, collage work tote bags. So we can get to those rural areas, convert this into a social entrepreneurship venture where we say, okay, we are putting a kind of innovation where you have to design something which is 100 rupees only
Yeah.
and which is climate friendly. So bring out that social entrepreneurship is also breaking systemic barrier of unaffordability. The third
Yes.
systemic barrier is too much information, and those information are all printed or either on the website. Now we need to get to radios, we need to get to social influencers, we need to get to village bulletin boards, connect with the corporate social responsibility team. So if there is a board of a chips that they are putting, they should also put a climate message, right? Right next to it.
Yeah.
So maybe reaching out to more audience will be a good idea. A call to action again. I will always endorse individual actions make a difference, and we need to campaign this for climate. And I cannot think of any other call to action right now, but it's the individual. If I'm planting one tree, at least my house temperature will be less 2 degrees, right? One
Yes.
person need, each one take one step. So each one teach one, each one take one step for climate. It's very important. I mean, Mariam, I'm sure you can see how we are burning in Karachi right now.
Yes, and I think this is the common call to action by everyone, specifically from the presenters, that we need to engage the parents and take one step at time. So this is really important. I think thank you for highlighting it again, because this is something we need to educate more, to engage the parents, to include them in the policies, to include them in the curriculum design. So now, as we come close to the webinar, to the end of the webinar, one truth is clear, that climate crisis is a child-like crisis, and we need to advocate for climate-resilient ECD system to help strengthen policies, have better financing, better planning, and emergency response, but which includes the parents. And not just from the urban settings, like Dr. Shanila said, but also from the urban settings. It's so that their voices are heard. So I would like to thank all of our esteemed presenters, Mr. Ugan, Ms. Lynn, and Dr. Shanila. Thank you so much. And on behalf of IT and Arnik, we thank you all for the participation and the participants for joining us today. Lastly, I would like to also add that Arnik Asia Pacific Regional Conference is also holding in Manali, Philippines from 30th June to 3rd July. So this year conference theme is also on crisis response, responsive ECD systems with both urban and rural disparities, and gender equality, equity, disabilities, inclusion, and cultures are the theme. So you can visit Arnik page for the details to register and attend it. And lastly, this webinar will be also recorded and will be available on ITA's YouTube page. And the key takeaways, with the call to actions, which we have just got from our presenters, will be shared on our social media and will be used for the advocacy later on, because these webinars are really important to strengthen the systems and to amplify the voices. So thank you so much for joining in. I hope this was insightful and helpful. Thank you for attending this webinar, and goodbye. If you further have any questions, you can share it on the social media page of Arnik and ITA. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you and bye everyone.